My Japanese is shit, or so I thought. See, about a week ago I gathered all my courage to meet up with somebody who I never spoke to, who doesn't speak my native language, to hopefully improve my Japanese. Now, although I didn't speak a lot of Japanese, actually I thought it went pretty well. We actually ended up speaking for like almost 2 hours, which is weird because I've had occasions where I wanted to practice my Japanese and I felt that my Japanese was absolutely horrible. You know, I made mistakes that I thought, how did I even make these mistakes? These are beginner mistakes. I shouldn't make these. So after this meeting, I realized something that I want to share with you in this video. See, the fluency is already in my brain, but it's my fear of speaking, my fear of being judged, the anxiety, the stress, and all these negative thoughts that prevent me from using that fluency that is already there. So in this video I want to go over these experiences and how I felt and how they affected my language performance. And ultimately I want to answer this question: how do you beat anxiety when learning another language? Because your fear is actually preventing you from reaching your full potential. Let's start with the reason why you're scared, or the reason why I'm scared. This is because you're treating the language as the goal, and by doing that you're creating this expectation and this extra pressure. I guess to further explain, let me go back to June 21st, a few days before this meeting happened. So see, in the morning I was watching this video by this Japanese teacher whose video I mostly watched to learn all the Japanese that I know now, and he was basically using this Japanese tutor to help him with reading Japanese. So anytime he would encounter a kanji, a Japanese kanji that he didn't know, he would ask Misaki for help. And when he did, I noticed that I actually understood what he was saying to her and what she said to him. I could not read all of the Japanese, obviously, but I could at least understand their conversation. And that's when I had this thought: if I can understand this, then I should probably practice speaking, and then I should also be able to reach this level of speaking, right? So that's what I did. I paused the video and I went to italki and I found a tutor to help me with speaking Japanese. But to be honest, it did not go as good as I expected. And here's why. The biggest reason is probably, well, certainly because I was quite nervous. You know, talking with strangers can be quite scary, and even though I really enjoy doing that, especially at work, I try to small talk with people, it is quite scary to talk with strangers. Now, I've done a few of these Japanese classes online before, and every time I did those, I felt nervous. And the reason, like I said, is that I'm focusing way too much on the language. I'm setting this expectation in my head of how well I think I should know this language, and then when I don't meet the expectations, then I feel even worse after the lessons. And I combine that with me being a perfectionist. Is that even an English word? I don't know. I want to say only the things that I know for certain that are 100% correct. And especially if it's things that I've learned already, I can't mess them up, right? So what is the solution? Well, one solution, which is the most obvious one, is to just keep practicing. Because if you keep practicing, you keep doing it, then you'll make a habit. And if you form a habit, then it becomes unconscious. And you don't have to think about it, and then you won't overthink it probably, right? But there's actually another solution, which I will tell you by actually asking you another question. What is the goal of your conversation? See, when I booked that session online, my goal for that conversation was to practice my Japanese. But actually I think that's a bad goal, because like I said, the goal should not be the language itself, because that creates stress, and all the stress leads to bad language skills in the conversation. Or actually I should say it prevents you from using all of the full potential, the fluency that's already here for as far as you've learned the language. Instead, I believe the goal should be anything except the language itself in the conversation. So let me explain that by asking you another question. What is the goal of language? Well, I'd say the answer is to facilitate communication between people so that they can hang out together, so they can have fun together, so they can work together, so they can just have a simple conversation, right? Now, the result of that communication is a better grasp of the language, but that is not the goal of the communication. I hope that makes sense, but this is why, for example, for me, classes just don't work. They force me to treat language as the goal, and that gives me stress, and I just can't speak to someone when I know that they're there trying to help me improve the language for some reason. Maybe it's just a mental thing, but it just doesn't work for me. Instead, I'd love to be in a situation where the language is just a tool to facilitate in communication. This could be in any experience. Or to simplify that, and here it comes, I thought it would be a good idea to set up a meeting with a Japanese person so that we can use the Japanese language as a tool to facilitate communication, so that I don't have to focus on the language itself. So then I won't have to think about it and I won't have to stress about it. So I guess this is my next tip. You have to create some sort of context where you can use the language instead of focusing on the language. So let me explain how exactly I did that. So a few months ago I moved to this new city in the Netherlands, and its university attracts a lot of international people from all over the world. I even thought it would be a good idea to meet some people by offering them to help with their Dutch and use that as an excuse to meet more people, right? And I got a lot of reaction from that, but ultimately nothing really happened. So fast forward and I did it again, but this time I was looking for somebody to help me with my Turkish because I wanted to learn Turkish. So I was looking for people whose native language was Turkish, and I actually found 2 people who responded. So I met up with them. On separate days I met up with one person and then the other, and I asked them if they could help me with learning Turkish. But you know what? I found myself in a dilemma, because here's what happened. My goal was to learn Turkish, but it was also to make friends, and these things couldn't really go together, because when I was asking them for help, then it would basically become like a language session, and that is again what I don't want, because now it becomes the focus is on the language, and that's not what I want. I just wanted to meet new people and have fun with them, have a drink with them. Now I can't really learn the language as a result of using it, like I said before, because I have zero knowledge of this language, so I wouldn't understand anything. So ultimately I gave up on Turkish, and I found another method actually, this time for Thai, like the language Thai. I found an online school that teaches Thai using a method where they have you listen to conversation and you don't focus on the language, you just focus on the conversation and you try to understand, but don't stress about the grammar or anything about that, just listen to the conversation. I'm actually really enjoying that, and if you want, I got 2 videos about that, so you can watch those as well. But anyway, after a while I had this great idea. What if I set up a meeting or something with a Japanese person? I can understand like basic normal stuff as long as it's normal conversation. And as for speaking, well, if I'm not too nervous, then sure, I can make myself clear. So I met up with this person. First, I gotta admit, I was really nervous, not just because of the Japanese, but because I'm meeting with a random stranger, somebody that I haven't met before. The only thing that we did is talk on Reddit, and then they sent me a message, and then we talked on WhatsApp. By the way, I'm not saying that you should exchange numbers, WhatsApp numbers immediately, but that's just something I chose to do. But once we started chatting, they actually suggested to grab a cup of coffee or tea, and I was quite surprised, and I said, you know what, fuck it, let's just do it. Okay, why not? Now we ended up talking for nearly 2 hours. To be exact, like 1 hour and 45 minutes. And this conversation was actually pretty nice. I wasn't stressing a lot. But now of course you're wondering, what about my Japanese? Well, first of all, I suggested that we did some cross-talking, and I explained them what it is, and basically it's when you both speak your native language. So for example, they would speak Japanese to me and then I would speak Dutch to them. They were not really learning Dutch yet, so I just spoke English to them, they speak Japanese to me. Now because we're both speaking native languages, we don't have to think about it, but also the other person gets to hear native language, which is 100% natural, of course. Now by speaking your own native language, you don't have to think, so you don't stress. So I was able to really just calm down and be fully relaxed from the fact that I was talking with a random stranger. And actually I asked them about it, like, don't you think it's a bit weird to just meet up with random strangers? And they straight up told me, like, you wrote this post in English and then in Japanese, so I figured it would be safe or okay. So I guess the fact that I wrote it in Japanese as well helped. Anyway, as soon as I was fully relaxed, I managed to speak some Japanese as well without feeling any stress. And it felt great. But I also noticed that as soon as I started to think about something, then it would go away. I would start to overthink and I would revert back to English and I would just not say it at all. So what I think that you should do is forget about it and just try to find another way to say it, because you know how to say it, but just the stress is preventing you from saying it. Now I'd love to do a meetup again, and we spoke about this too, but I firmly believe that this is the best way to acquire or learn a language in the most natural way. Finding or creating experiences where you can use the language without worrying too much about the language itself. But you know, here's the thing. That means that learning languages is not about learning languages anymore. It's about just living life, having experiences, and building relationships and communication. And you know what? That's the essence of languages, right? That's the beautiful thing about it. Imagine if you could go into any social situation with 100% confidence and no negative thoughts of anything. I think you would have such an advantage, honestly. But how do you do that? How do you get rid of the fear of speaking? But now in my case, I start to worry when I think I have to speak another language. Actually, after that meeting in the evening, I told somebody on Discord that I would speak to them as well, because they also responded to that post and they said they were half Italian and half Japanese. I spoke with them, but they asked me, well, let me hear some of your Japanese. And when people do that, my brain just shuts down. I can't do it. It's too stressful. So instead, I like to change I have to speak into I want to have fun experiences and use the language. And that really helps with calming down your mind and all these negative thoughts. And actually, I started reading these books about spirituality and mindset and therapy and these kind of things. And I guess the main advice that I could give you is that you probably have these negative emotions as a result of your brain coping with interactions that you had when you were younger, probably. You should really become aware of these and realize that this is not you. This is just some emotions that you feel, but you can separate from those. You can fix them. Like, these are just habits that you formed and that you still have when you talk to people. For example, in my case, the reason that I want to be perfect before I say something in another language is because I don't want to be judged. And this is not only in the language. I don't want to be judged in general. Also in life, I don't want to be judged, you know? So I guess I just need to learn to accept that. See how your mental state really affects your language performance? It's something that I think is really important and really interesting to learn about. So if you like that topic, then let me know. If you look at most polyglots, they must be really good at socializing and communicating as well, right? Because they have all these experiences and they speak a lot and they listen and they probably practice a lot with communicating and social skills as well. But you know, this leads to a dilemma, and here's why. I mentioned this in another video as well, but you know, the whole improvement of technology and internet, it makes us really antisocial. Or actually, I should say, because of that, we don't really have to communicate anymore. We can just go on the internet and learn our things there, you know? So now we don't really get to develop those skills that we need when we actually speak with other people to practice our language. Instead, we go learn the languages the traditional way, and I think this is just way too boring. Okay, so I have this choice. I can go on the internet and learn, let's say, Japanese the old traditional way, which I think is kind of boring. Or I could just try and have as many fun experiences in my life and then learn the languages as a result of that. Well, obviously I choose the second one. And that's also what I want to show you on this channel. I want to show you how you can use languages to have these fun experiences and how these fun experiences can be used to learn the language faster. So if you want to see that, then subscribe and I will see you next time. Bye bye.